Post-COVID syndrome, or long-haul COVID, can be a huge emotional impact on workers, especially if they lose their job and their identity in the process. Your job, should you choose to accept it, is to develop a global view of COVID symptoms, the law, treatment modalities, and to think about rehabilitation steps, tiny and large, that can encourage the injured worker to do something to help themselves, whether they realize it or not. You know, there's close to 20 million adults in the U.S. are believed to have long COVID symptoms right now, according to the Census Bureau, with approximately 4 million unable to return to work. That's about 2.4% of the U.S. working population, or approximately $230 billion a year in lost earnings. There's no definitive cause for why some people get long or post-COVID and others do not. But I think we can all agree that COVID is going to be around for the long haul, with new variations cropping up every year. People with post-COVID conditions may develop or continue to have symptoms that are hard to explain and manage. Clinical evaluations and results of routine blood tests, chest x-rays, electrocardiograms may be normal, as we heard from Dr. Van earlier today. The symptoms are similar to those reported by people with encephalitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, and other poorly understood chronic illnesses that may occur after infections. People with these unexplained symptoms may be understood by their healthcare providers, which may result in them receiving delayed or inappropriate medical care. Research suggests that more than 40% who have had COVID-19 get long COVID. Among the people who needed hospitalization, the stats went up to 57%. Research shows that 10% of the people are between the ages of 18 and 49. That's a prime factor for the people that you're working with. And the odds then go up to 22% for people that are 70 years of age and older. Thankfully, most of those people are retired unless they go back because of not having enough retirement benefits. But it can happen to anyone, whether you're otherwise healthy or have other health conditions. And as if women don't have enough problems in their lives, long-haul COVID seems to affect them more than men. This is particularly true for women between the ages of 40 to 60. We've all heard about some of the symptoms of COVID. You know, this includes fatigue, which is worse than being up every night for a year with a newborn that has colic. One new fact for me was that people could experience increased symptoms after sustained mental or physical effort. Think about this last part from your own perspective. While most of you don't have to be performing light or heavy-duty work, there's a lot of mental effort that goes on as your work as a rehab provider. Think about that. Yeah, I know that there's some stakeholders out there that believe otherwise, that you guys don't have to be thinking, but we know that that's a little bit different. Now, throw in the difficulty with breathing and chest pain, and you're a world of hurt, literally. There are individuals with concentration problems, sometimes referred to as brain fog. You know, a friend of mine who was hospitalized with COVID described her brain fog as the same concentration problem she had when she had undergone chemo treatment. Of course, there's still others who have lost their ability to smell or taste, and that has not returned. Or those with sleeping problems as a result that their body doesn't have enough energy to heal itself. Additionally, there are individuals with situational depression whose sense of loss can evolve into something deeper and darker. There are real physical symptoms which may occur and which make a bad day seem even worse, such as diarrhea, stomach pain, sensitivity to food, or having balance problems. With respect to the latter, think about how hard it would be for you to dry your feet after a shower if you have balance problems. Bending over to dry your feet could cause you to lose your balance, fall, and hit your head, and the head which isn't already thinking that clearly to begin with. I mentioned before the post-COVID effects women more than men. This has led researchers to see if there's a link between long COVID and menopause, as there are many overlapping symptoms. Some of these symptoms include brain fog, poor sleep, headaches, fatigue, joint pain, anxiety, low mood. Menopause, in addition, can be present with hot flashes and disruption to periods. And while, as a rehab provider, you're not expected to provide treatment, it may come up in conversation. So it's good to know about these symptoms just in case. That said, the best bet is always to refer those individuals back to their general practitioner for their opinion and to see if treatment would be of benefit. Let's see here. As far as the emotional impact, the experience of having COVID can be very frightening. It is understandable that the experience of contracting the virus and then suffering from ongoing symptoms for months can have a huge impact on one. Now, I know you're saying to yourself, well, it's not any different from the other major injuries that other injured workers may suffer. And in part, that's true if they've had a catastrophic accident, such as having a building fall on them. But then again, the fact is that someone sneezing on them 10 years ago would not have brought them to this point. The question of what could they have done differently will always haunt them. Plus, there's the family's financial loss of financial support, or other members who may have contracted the disease from them is an additional emotional burden, which can be overwhelming. Let's see here. Employees will be looking for answers on how to handle these times when they're more emotional than others. Having their treating physician refer them to work with both a psychiatrist and a psychologist can produce positive results. In the meantime, for those wanting to deal with the issues on their own, they might try speaking to family and friends during these periods, or trying activities that they find enjoyable and relaxing, reminding themselves to not be too hard on themselves, and to remind themselves that recovery takes time. And finally, to focus on what they can control. A person with long COVID has a disability if their condition or symptoms include physical or mental impairment and substantially limits one or more life activities. I think I'm one behind. There we go. Major life activities include a wide range of activities, such as caring for oneself, performing manual tasks, seeing, hearing, eating, sleeping, walking, standing, sitting, reaching, lifting, bending, speaking, breathing, learning, reading, concentrating, and thinking, writing, communicating, and interacting with others, and working. The term also includes operation of major bodily functions, or systems such as the immune system, cardiovascular, neurological, circulatory, or operation of an organ. There is less control, of course, with hiring when it involves a new employer. They can simply say they found someone better that is a better fit, I should say. And if you've been behind the driver's seat as a manager, you know this to be true. If you've not been in that position, then I suggest you talk to your manager to learn what other tricks might be out there that managers can pull when it comes to hiring somebody. Long COVID can substantially limit major life activities. Possible examples include lung damage that causes shortness of breath, and related effects is substantially limiting in respiratory function, among other life activities. Intestinal pain, such as vomiting and nausea, have lingered for months, is substantially limited in gastrointestinal function, along with other major life activities. Memory lapses or brain fog, as we've talked about before, where the brain is substantially limited in function, concentration, and or thinking. Our world is about dealing with unexpected speed bumps, figuring out a solution, and making a successful outcome happen. For those of you thinking all a QRC needs to do is attend a medical appointment with no plan, which is easy billable, then you're in the wrong profession. There's a lot to this. The focus for you is to determine how their symptoms are affecting their life as barriers to overcome, and then to make modifications in the workplace for successful return to work. So if you're working with an employee who has debilitating headaches that come on without warning or is triggered by bright lights, think about how you would handle that return to work situation. In that situation, you might consider having the person take 5-minute breaks throughout the day to meditate, breathe deeply, or take a walk outside for some deep air, fresh air. You might teach them to be cutting their big projects into smaller chunks to make them manageable. Teaching them how to deal with grievances right away rather than let them simmer. This includes discussing any issues with their manager, HR representative, or with a supportive coworker. If stress gets overwhelming for them, to see a therapist or a counselor for advice. In the office setting, they can certainly go ahead and dim the lights. Have them turn down the brightness on their computer monitor, install an anti-glare screen, dim the overhead lights in their cubicle or office, and if dimming isn't an option, then the lights are too bright, ask the office manager if they can switch the employee to a lower watt bulb. They can turn down the volume. If the office has music, turn down the music, have them go into their own office. It's segregated away from the others so that they can close off the sound by simply closing their door. Or maybe it's just a matter of adding pieces of carpet to the walls to absorb the sound. If all else fails, maybe that individual could wear earplugs just to kind of dim things down a little bit. You might find sensitivity to strong odors. Ask any coworkers who go in heavy with perfume or cologne to take it easy on the scents. Also explain their sensitivity to the office manager so that they can ask the cleaning crew to also avoid using strong-smelling chemicals. Maybe it's a matter of getting more ergonomic. Position the computer, monitor, and chair to maximize comfort and minimize eye strain. Poor posture can cause tension in the body and trigger headaches. During medical management, well, as you've heard me before, and several times, medical management isn't a period for an injured worker just to sit around and do nothing but attend medical appointments every 4 to 6 weeks. Give them something to do that helps keep them focused on a positive outcome. Don't be surprised if the injured worker is participating in therapy at the time that they're referred to you for services. This might include cognitive therapy, speech therapy, breathing exercises, pacing activities to overcome fatigue, and exercises to reduce their heart rate. And like any other exercise program, it's likely that they'll be faithful at first to do all that's required. But then, after a while, kind of like all of us, the luster wears off, and they begin questioning the benefit of keeping it up because they can't tell the difference. This is the time for you to be a cheerleader, noting that the light at the end of the tunnel will keep getting brighter every day, but it's going to take time. Much like medical management with other injured workers, a QRC can help facilitate referrals to programs to help employees improve their physical stamina, speech-related, and mental health issues. There's free resources out there. The Minnesota Department of Health website lists several hotlines out there. There's the National Alliance on Mental Health Illness in Minnesota. There's for the long-haul effects on families, there's the Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health. There's a crisis text line, crisis services, which is CRISIS. One of the ones I like is the Adult Mental Health Crisis Response Numbers, in which they're all broken down by counties and by tribes in Minnesota. Valuable. There's a Minnesota Warm Line, National Suicide Prevention, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, Administrative Disaster Distress Helpline, Peer Support Connection Warm Lines. So there's a number of different resources that the people can take advantage. It's not going to cost them anything. The insurer is not going to complain because it's not costing them anything either. Let's see. Trying to think of where I'm at here. It's hard to keep track of that. All right. Off work doesn't mean sitting on the couch, as we've talked about, and watching TV. As you know, the regular injured employee that's set up for further deconditioning and increased situational depression if they're just staying home and doing nothing. And then for those with post-COVID syndrome, it can actually seem much worse. The key is getting folks to focus on something other than their condition. It can be as simple as walking in the park and taking pictures and then putting them in an album. The more they go, the better the pictures will become, or attending a class to either brush up on old basic math skills in preparation for vocational testing, think about that, or to learn how to use all the features of their cell phone. Get them up, out of the house, working and moving forward. And while they're doing this, a good time for you is to do transferable skills analysis, or to have somebody else conduct it for you to identify possible jobs for the employee to return to with their date of injury employer, possible job search outside of the employer, assist in the decision process if more formal vocational evaluation will be needed and conducted. According to recent news reports, the federal government is planning on several interest hikes to get a handle on inflation. High inflation in the past has meant layoffs and higher prices for everything. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but isn't it a better case right now to be planning ahead and working with these individuals on these small steps so that a job can be identified that's going to get them back to a suitable, gainful job? Of course, it's important to keep connected with the injured worker and see that they're connected to friends and family. It's easy for depression and isolationism to set in, which saps the injured worker's energy and outlook on life. It's possible, if possible, get folks into the habit of journaling their day on what happened and what their plans are for tomorrow. This is especially good if folks have brain fog memory problems. A side benefit of the journal, of course, is it will help them as a daily reminder for the activities that they need to do, just like making a list, right? And of course, as their days get better, the journal is a self-reward for the accomplishments that they've gotten as they have progressed through to where they are now. Also, I've talked to folks at QRC intern and basic adjuster training about the medical management period as a perfect time for folks to brush up on their basic academics, for possible vocational testing, or to take advantage of free secondary language classes. And there was a lady by the name of Amy Chua who once asked and answered this question: do you know what a foreign accent is? Anybody? Do you know what a foreign accent is? It's a sign of bravery. Think about that. How many of us are willing to go out and learn a brand new language? That's tough. So, by having them participate in secondary classes, secondary language classes, it's going to help them be more successful in the long run. Now, I mentioned brain fog before, and when looking at a return to work situation, see about placement in an environment in which there are less distractions. Also, as an environment in which it's okay for the person to talk out loud so they can hear themselves process the problem and their solution. Also, since fatigue magnifies brain fog symptoms, you might look at the environment in which the person can take many breaks or focus on one aspect of the work at a time. And while the younger generation prides itself on being able to multitask, brain fog will cause more errors and subsequent frustration levels. If need be, consider leaving a simple written instructions or picture instructions of what needs to be done. Make it simple so that they can go ahead and process. You know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Try it. Plus, if English is a barrier, Pictures will transcend that, right? Let's see here. I think there I am. Speech-wise, COVID may leave some with a breathy voice. If you've ever tried to yell for a dog to come in a breathy voice, you know that it doesn't work so well, especially if you're getting more hard of hearing. And no, I don't want to hear any comments about men and their selective hearing. I know what you're thinking. That said, on the slide are some tips and tricks that might help us, like that. And that. Okay, back to fatigue and what to do with it. If possible, see if the employer is willing to have the employee come back and do flexible work hours. Perhaps look at graduated return to work starting at 2 to 4 hours of work per day for X number of weeks. If there's anyone here who has not used a graduated return to work program to get their clients back to work, has anybody ever not done that with any of their clients? It's a nice way to get them back, especially if they don't have the initial strength, right? Also, while the employee is off work, there might be activities that they are doing as a way that they can go ahead and increase the physical nature of their task to increase their physical endurance. Perhaps having them do the laundry and sweeping and mopping the floors at the same time. It's a better alternative than doing the laundry and sitting and watching TV while it's getting done, right? With respect to brain fog or cognitive issues, perhaps doing word association games on their cell phones to sharpen the mind. And or, of course, talking with a friend from work and getting caught up on what's happening there as far as projects gets them re-engaged, reopen up those brain cells. For those individuals with hearts that are affected by COVID, including rapid heartbeat, dizziness, or chest discomfort, consultation with a physician is always recommended to determine when exercises should start and when to increase their activity levels. On this slide, I think, is the formula to determine one's maximum heart rate. Thought you might find it interesting for both you and your clients. Well, at least for those of you who are runners or play football or those kinds of things, broom ball. Let's see. On this slide are exercises a physician might recommend to increase an injured worker's physical ability. So I'm providing that just as a reference point. Whoops. In 2021, the average cost of vocational rehab services for participants returning to work with their date of entry employer was $6,370. COVID costs were not figured into that amount. And the percentage of those returning to work with their date of entry employers was 45%. The average ratio of return to work wage to pre-entry job was 97%. There we go. Sorry. The Americans with Disability Act protects employers too. Now, an employer can require an employee to provide them with a workability note that it's safe for the employee to return to work, and they can bar any employee from the workplace if it isn't provided and or if a non-COVID employee refuses to respond to COVID questions or having their temperature taken. I will tell you right now, every time I go into the Department of Labor and Industry building, I have to go ahead and submit to COVID questions. Interesting. Furthermore, an employer can require all employees to be vaccinated against COVID. That said, the law does provide for reasonable accommodation to unvaccinated employees if it should produce an undue hardship. This might include face masks, social distancing, working a modified shift, periodic testing, reassignment, or even telework. As a reminder, there is an exception within the ADA for individuals not wanting to be vaccinated, based on sincerely held religious beliefs, practices, and observations. If this is the case, have the employee tell the employer in plain language why they believe They don't have to be vaccinated. Now, I'm not saying that they don't want the vaccination because it's a government plot to inject them with a GPS tracker. Doesn't necessarily qualify, especially if they carry cell phones with them, right? Because we know they all got GPS trackers. This slide is old hat to you, as it covers all the ways of returning an employee to work, either with their date of entry employer or with a new one. We always have to keep our eye on the ball when thinking about medical management and return to work. With respect to return to work with the same employer, it's never too early to start talking with the employer and the employee about a return to work. Communications are usually the first thing to break down, so getting both parties used to talking to one another is key. Employers who have a good line of communication with their workers tend to be more flexible when it comes to working with a physician and QRCs regarding modified work hours and to increase the employee's endurance for work. If it appears the employee won't be able to return to work at the return to work site, then considering some type of flexible type of telework related job or perhaps a workstation can be set up in the employee's home. Think outside the box. Let's face it, the pandemic has really changed the way that we look at work and what can be accomplished by someone who works from their home. As you might know, the new prospective employer can require a job applicant to be screened for COVID. After making a conditional job offer, of course, that said, keep an ear open to see if the employer requires testing of all applicants. All applicants. And of course, an employer can't postpone or withdraw a job offer because the employee's underlying post-COVID syndrome. Let's see here. So, returning to work with the date of entry employer, it's important to get the employees physically active and get them away from the television. Many employers prefer that an employee be able to minimally work half a day, if not a full regular 8-hour day. Volunteer work may give you the break that you're looking for to do a graduated return to work, starting at 2 hours a day for 2 to 4 hours, and then 3 hours or 4 hours a day, etc. Plus, it'll reestablish a work history and current job references. Additionally, you might look at a jobs share situation. This is where two individuals split up a job, either by the hours worked or the days worked, so there's an option to explore. Of course, during the medical management period, you've had the employee involved in job-seeking skills training with a vendor or someone in-house that will do a good job, because you're not waiting for the employee to be declared at maximum medical improvement when it's already clear what their permanent limitations are likely to be. Job skills might include making sure the employee can use their cell phone to schedule interviews, setting up a LinkedIn account, etc., and to set up a reminder on their phone or computer to get them into interviews on time. Consider, after conducting a transferable skills analysis, the development of an on-the-job training program with a prospective employer. In fact, this should be a part of every placement plan when a return to work looks like it's going to be difficult with somebody, right? Talk with the adjuster ahead of time so this becomes part of your plan. And or perhaps a second bite at the apple is to use an apprenticeship program through one of the Minnesota programs. Because right now, Minnesota is encouraging employers to develop apprenticeships in the trades by offering financial incentives. If they failed at a training plan, that might be a second bite at the apple for us. Let's see here. As previously noted, doing job-seeking skills training while the employee is in medical management, or at least before they're declared at MMI, is important. Also, having the employee participate in a virtual job fair or a virtual interview to sharpen their skills. Now, you don't have to raise your hands. However, who here lately has done a virtual job fair or a job interview and knows what that's like and what to expect? How many of you? If you don't know what that's like, how do you know how your employee is going to react, be successful, and get them set up so that they're ready for that part of the process? With respect to job goals, have the employee begin to research whatever job areas that they're interested in to learn the words of that particular industry, so that they're going to be able to talk the talk of that particular employer and be able to establish a good ground communication with that person. And if they get asked a question, so that they'll be able to at least answer it, right? Now, nowhere in the statutes does it say that a QRC or placement vendor's goal is to help settle out an injured worker's rehab file or claim. Your job is to restore the injured worker so the employee may return to a job related to the employee's former employment or to a job in another work area which produces an economic status as close as possible to that which the employee would have enjoyed without disability. Economic status to be measured by not only opportunity for immediate income, but also by opportunity for future income. So long-haul COVID or not, the goal remains the same. Any questions? All right. Well, I guess if there are no questions, we can probably let you folks go home early. Have a good day.